I was rushing to cover myself with bedsheets while his friend kept smirking.
Sometimes in life, decisions are harder than they appear to be. Not everything ends up being a left or right decision. Not even a true or false decision is easy sometimes. I know this now because I'm being faced with making such decisions that appear snappy, but really, they're not. My name is Olivia, and I'm a 28-year-old salonist. I own my own salon, and it's a passion I've been pursuing almost all my life. I'm married, and my husband's name is Stanley. He's 28 years old, and he's a freelancer. He's actually a very successful freelancer, and he's done freelancing for almost 10 years now. He's so good at it that it became his own personal profession, and no, he doesn't work from home. He has his own office with people under him who work for him. So guys, we got married 2 years ago, and we dated for exactly 8 months. I don't think we rushed into the marriage, though. My parents always felt like we were moving too fast. I've seen people get married within 5 or even 3 months. The fact that we waited 8 months didn't seem like a rush to me. We met each other and felt like there was no need to keep waiting. We believed that we were right for each other, so we got married. Our married life is nothing out of the ordinary. It's just like a normal marriage, and there is no drama. We fight once in a while and disagree over some certain things, but that's all there is to it. We close from work at the same time, but... Now there's something that has been bothering me for some time. Just a few days ago, I had to temporarily close down my salon because I felt like I was being overcharged for tax. It was also becoming difficult to run the salon because I couldn't keep up with the bills that kept piling up. I had people who worked for me, and I had to pay them too. I was making a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it always felt like I wasn't making any profit. I decided to close down the salon so I could take time to figure out exactly what I was doing wrong. I didn't think closing down the salon would be as difficult as it currently is, but I guess one can never be too sure. It's a lot going on, and I never expected any of it to affect my marriage. Staying at home is difficult, but what's worse is being broke while you're at it. Stanley and I recently got into a fight because I didn't like the kind of reply he gave when I told him I was closing down my business. I didn't expect my husband to act so nonchalantly. If your wife comes to you with a business problem and complains about not making profit and getting overtaxed, you're at least supposed to help her out. If he even offered to help me, I'd have been very grateful. But instead, he just decided to go on with his life as if nothing happened. I expected Stanley to offer me money as a form of help. He has the money and I know it. He's a freelancer that earns on a daily basis. How hard could it be for him to offer me some money to help my business? Before anyone judges Key in the comments section, let me put it out there that I know Stanley earns a lot of money. He doesn't take up small tasks. He once told me that he doesn't take up any task less than $100. He also has people under him who work for him while he teaches them in return. I don't think that he would go broke if he just helped me out. At first, I tried waiting to see if he would eventually try to offer help, but he didn't, so I confronted him. I asked him why he wasn't offering me any help, and he gave me the silly excuse of saying that he just wanted me to figure things out on my own and become a strong businesswoman. What kind of silly excuse is that? I mean, how could anyone really say that to his wife? I've had that salon for 6 good years. If I was able to run it for 6 years and move to a bigger place, then that proves I'm a strong businesswoman. I don't know why he feels like there needs to be a test to prove that. I made it clear to him that what I needed was his financial assistance, not his advice, but he refused to listen to me. Instead, he just decided to feel irritated and angry. That really made me upset because I've been a very independent person, even after I got married to him. I don't ask him to give me money, ever. He only gets things for me out of his own free will and when he feels like it. I don't ask him for money or monthly allowance, so it really hurts me that he's taking his time and making up excuses now that I finally need his help, and I've asked him for money. I'm upset, and I don't think I'll ever not be, because when I think about everything that's been happening within these few days, I get really angry. As if all that is not enough, he shuts me up when I try to bring up the topic again. He told me he's done with that conversation and would not be entertaining it anymore. Stanley has been getting on my nerves a lot, and it's very annoying. I decided to speak to one of my friends just 2 days ago, and she advised me to play it cool and just re-strategize. I mean, how am I supposed to restructure when I don't have any financial support? How am I supposed to get back on my feet with no help? My only source of income is temporarily closed, and my husband is trying to play smart with me. While I was sitting at home doing nothing yesterday, I decided to scroll around social media since that was all I started doing recently. Before I closed down my salon, I didn't have any social media accounts. Yes, I'm actually very serious. I didn't even have a Facebook account. I only had the WhatsApp app, and that was just so I could interact with my family and my clients. I was always too busy to waste time on social media. But since I became very bored and tired of staying home doing nothing, I decided to get on social media. I opened accounts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, and even Snapchat. I uploaded some of my pictures there and rapidly watched my account grow. I already have thousands of friends, and I communicate with some once in a while. My husband doesn't know about it because I don't really think that this has anything to do with him. Opening a social media account is normal for most individuals, so I just went with it. So, while I was scrolling around yesterday, I stumbled upon a friend request that made me raise my brows. I normally just accepted every friend request I got without scrolling through the person's profile, but the one I got yesterday piqued my interest. On the profile was a very handsome man, and his timeline was filled with very hot pictures. I couldn't understand why a man like that sent a woman like me a friend request. I'd not used such apps before, so I think I'm still quite naive. I clearly stated I'm married on my bio, so I didn't get why. A man like that thought it was okay to be friends with me. I spoke to my sister about it, and she laughed at me. She told me I was being dramatic, and that it was absolutely normal to receive friend requests from people whether you're married or not. We ended up laughing about it, and she casually told me to accept the friend request. At first, I was a little bit skeptical, but then she made it clear to me that not all friends actually message each other. She said that the fact that I had 2,000 friends didn't mean I'd talk to each of them. She said most friends are just there to look at your pictures or add to the numbers. That made some sense to me, so I casually accepted the friend request. Now, the problem is that barely a few minutes after accepting the friend request yesterday at midnight, he messaged me. It's normal to receive a message, but it's the endearment he used that actually caught my attention. He just casually said, "Hi, dear." I was shocked, and the use of the love emoji had me cleaning my eyes to see if I was dreaming. Now, I really do feel like I shouldn't have waited years before having a social media account. Now I'm busy overthinking things and seeing small activities as a big deal. I decided to just reply with a simple hello, so I would not end up acting like a fool. I couldn't speak to my sister anymore because I didn't want her to make fun of me. I don't want to say the guy's real name, so I'll just refer to him as Logan. Logan and I have been chatting quite frequently since yesterday, and I spent over 3 hours speaking to him over the night. I don't know if what I'm doing is right or if I should just end the conversation and stop replying to his messages. What's bothering me is the fact that he uses the love emoji a lot. He uses heart emojis and all those suggestive things. He calls me love, dear, and sweetheart. I don't know if a married woman like me should be engaging in such conversations. I'm quite confused. Even though I've tried avoiding the messages, I just can't help but keep replying to him. I think the reason for this is my current state of joblessness. I don't know what to do, guys. And that brings me to the first statement I made when starting this post. I said sometimes not everything is a yes or no answer. I could just unfriend him and stop replying to his messages, but something so simple is becoming way too difficult for me. Now I understand that saying. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. Update. Social media is dangerous. The fact that you see a person's picture doesn't mean you know anything about their life. It's been a crazy ride, guys. I'm in shock as I write this to you all. Nothing is as it seems, and I have learnt this the hard way. My social curiosity has come to bite me in the back, and right now, I've realized the mistakes I've made. I cannot believe that my life has gone south in just 4 months. It's just been 4 months, but I've experienced so much change that I'm still finding it hard to comprehend everything. If you're wondering what I'm trying to say, then let me just put it this way. I didn't stop speaking to my Facebook friend. Logan and I are still in contact, and the drama that's come with it is too much to comprehend. I've experienced a lot during these past 2 weeks, and I don't think I ever imagined my life taking such a turn. Barely 2 days after making this post, Logan and I became friends. When I say we became friends, I really mean it. We kept on interacting so much that 2 days felt like forever. He asked for my phone number, and I gave it to him. That's how we started chatting on WhatsApp. He called me almost every hour, and since I was jobless at home, I had enough time to pick his calls and engage in conversations with him. I was conscious at first, and I tried to limit the way we talked to each other, but at some point I stopped being conscious and started speaking to him freely. I didn't understand why a stranger thought it was okay to casually tell me about his life. Maybe it's because I never really had a social life before. That's the excuse I always gave myself when he did things I considered too forward. He would ask me to send him pictures and I would send it to him. He also sent me his pictures, so it was like a give and take situation. He always called me beautiful, and I ended up blushing in return. I also found him attractive, but I tried my best to keep that to myself. A part of me always kept reminding me that I needed to keep boundaries between us because I was still married. But I knew I could not deceive myself because it was obvious to me that I'd already started crossing a lot of boundaries. I knew deep down that I was acting out because I was angry with my husband. Stanley had still not given me any form of financial support, even though I'd been home for quite some time. During one of my chats with Logan, he asked me what job I did, and I told him I owned a salon, but I'd closed it down temporarily. He was shocked when I told him that, so he asked me why I chose to do what I did. I explained everything to him, and that's when he told me he's actually an accountant and could help me calculate my tax rate if I told him the necessary information. I did just that, and that's when he confirmed that I was really being charged extra. I was really happy to know that I was not wrong, and I didn't close down my salon for nothing at all. He asked me why I just closed it down like that, and I told him I had a lot of customers, but I was just not earning enough profit at the end of the month when I calculated my income. He called me immediately after reading the text message and started asking me questions about my employees and how I run my business. He randomly asked for my account number while we spoke. I asked what he wanted to use it for, and he just casually told me he wanted to use it for some financial calculation. I knew he was just trying to make up an excuse, and I knew he wanted to give me money. I sent him the account number, but didn't expect to get a credit alert barely 10 minutes later. I got a credit alert of $1,000. I was shocked, to say the least. A stranger who I had known for just 2 weeks had sent me $1,000 randomly. I knew he wanted to send money, but I didn't think it would be that big. I imagined he'd just send a few dollars or so. The fact that I didn't even ask him for it and he just sent it made me really surprised. I called him immediately and asked him why he sent me money. He just laughed it off and told me that was just his way of appreciating me. I felt bad about receiving that kind of money, so I sent it back to him and told him I couldn't accept the money. He sent it back to me and told me I should just accept the money. I really appreciated it because for someone like me, who had spent weeks at home being jobless, I appreciated the gesture. It was a huge start for me to have some savings I could use to get my business back on track. Our bond became even stronger, and we started video calling each other. For me, it felt like I was talking to a friend I'd known all my life because he was just too nice. I loved everything about our friendship, and the way he always called to check up on me and give me business advice. I started receiving random alerts, and when I asked him why he sent it, he would tell me not to bother. Within another 2 weeks, I'd been able to receive $2,000. It was more than enough money for me to get back on my feet. Logan was an accountant, so he gave me a lot of tips on how to manage money. I'd gathered $3,000 from someone I wasn't even married to, and my husband found it hard to give me little money to fund my salon. Of course, I'm human, and a lot of ideas got into my head. I kept telling myself that I'd been a total for trying to keep boundaries between me and Logan. If my husband couldn't give me money for trying to fund a salon, then why should I even bother? It wasn't like I asked for money to spend recklessly on luxurious clothes. All I wanted was to get my business back together. He didn't give me financial advice or even try to think of a solution with me. He just made me a housewife and went to work every day like nothing happened. I felt like Logan was better than my husband, and so I just decided to be free and do whatever my heart wanted. Stanley started noticing the way I withdrew from him, and even though he tried to pretend like it didn't bother him, I knew he felt some type of way. But honestly, I didn't care because I was still very angry. If you're not ready to give your wife what she wants, didn't be angry when she eventually looks elsewhere. That's the logic I used, and that's what I used to validate my actions. When I told Logan I planned on opening up my salon again, he was really proud of me. He sent me money again and even offered to send some help. He was able to send some workers to clean up the salon and renovate some things. He did everything from his own pocket, and I didn't have to spend much money at all. At some point, Logan told me he was finally ready to meet me physically. He lived in another city, which was 4 hours away, but he told me he would make time to come see me after I opened my salon. I was also finally ready to meet Logan because, to be honest, I'd fallen in love with him. Yes, guys, I fell in love with the guy I met online. I loved him because I couldn't believe that a guy that never saw me or got intimate with me could love me that much. Normally, if a guy cares for you like that, you would imagine he just washed your body. But Logan hadn't met me, and he treated me with so much love, so I was certain that I'd fallen in love with him. I didn't tell Stanley I reopened my salon at first because I felt like he didn't care. I felt like the way he had been nonchalant before meant that it didn't bother him that I was jobless, so I didn't tell him anything. He left the house before me and came back after me, so he was clueless. Maybe he didn't suspect anything at first because he was so sure I'd been too broke to start it up all over again. But just like every other experience, this one also had a traitor. You know, I told you guys I had people that worked under me, right? So, Logan told me he suspected that the reason I wasn't earning enough was because my workers were not being honest with my finances. He advised me to sack all of them because he felt like there was someone being dishonest. Some of my workers had moved on and seen other jobs, except only 2 of them. I told them there was no need to come back and advised them to look for other jobs. One of them is Stanley's cousin, and she came to the salon to beg me, but I refused. While she was at the salon, I received a video call from Logan and we flirted on the phone. I forgot about Stanley's cousin, Anna's presence, and she used that to her advantage. She told Stanley that I was cheating on him and I was flirting with another guy. She also told him I fired her and reopened the salon. When I got back that day, Stanley welcomed me angrily and confronted me. He told me that Anna visited and had a lot to say about me. First of all, he asked me why I had the audacity to fire his cousin. Yes, he really said that. It's the audacity for me. He then asked me why I didn't tell him I was planning on reopening my salon. He told me I was foolish for trying to keep secrets from him when he had ears and eyes everywhere. Stanley then accused me of cheating on him because Anna told him she saw me flirting with another guy. I didn't keep mute. Of course, I tried to defend myself by asking him if he had any evidence to back what he said. He told me he was sure I was cheating because that would be the only explanation for having enough money to reopen the salon when I was jobless for weeks. I got really upset that he was so confident I could only reopen my salon by getting money from someone else. That just proved to me that he didn't help me intentionally and left me defend myself. I foolishly told him I was in love with someone I met online, but I had not met him physically yet, so that meant that I didn't cheat on him yet. Stanley got upset when I told him that and said he wanted a divorce. I was actually happy, and I told him I wanted a divorce too, because I couldn't stay with a stingy, selfish man. The next day, I packed my things and left the house. Of course, I had enough money on me. Stanley also told me he filed for divorce and would send me the papers in a week. Logan was aware I was married, so I told him what happened with my husband. He told me he wanted to see me the next day because he was already in the city. I was surprised because we planned on seeing each other at a later date, so I didn't understand why he wanted to love it forward. But since he was already in the city, I agreed. I waited for him at a restaurant, and that was when I met the shock of my life. A woman walked into the restaurant and grabbed my shirt suddenly. At first, I tried talking calmly because I thought she had mistaken me for someone else, but I later discovered that she was Logan's wife. She showed me wedding pictures of Logan and herself and accused me of being a husband snatcher. It felt like I was in a movie, but it was real. Apparently, I'd fallen in love with a married man. She poured a full jar of water, slapped me across the face before warning me to stay away from her husband. I was too shocked to act back. I went home and fried myself to sleep because I realized that I'd ruined my marriage for a married man. I called Logan's other number and told him everything that happened. He was surprised because, according to him, he wasn't the one that asked us to meet and he checked his phone, but there were no messages like that. He later discovered 2 days later that his wife was the one I chatted with that day, and she deleted the messages when she was done. He apologized to me and asked if we could meet again, but I refused. I blocked all his contacts and blocked him on social media. He had a child, and from what I saw that day, his wife is not ready to leave him. I might be stupid, but I'm not stupid enough to ruin another woman's marriage and break a child's family. If I was aware that he was married, I wouldn't have let things get that far. Stanley sent me the divorce papers 1 week later after he signed them. I signed them too and sent it to him. Our divorce would be finalized in 2 months. I didn't go back to beg because I knew I was at fault, and if Logan's wife didn't come to beat me up, I wouldn't have gone back to him. Our marriage was over from the moment he refused to help me, and from the moment I started encouraging another man's messages. My karma hit me hard because bad decisions lead to bad circumstances. A married woman shouldn't date online. Social media is also deceptive because a person can lie through their teeth, yet you won't know. Hey Redditors, long-time lurker but first-time poster. I've always been a huge fan of Reddit, and it has always been one of my favorite social media, but I never expected that one day I'd be here in Reddit posting and asking for advice. I guess life isn't always what you expect. I am currently in such a shitty position, I don't even know what to do. I am distraught. I am hoping that by posting here, I'll get reasonable advice on what to do next, or some semblance of peace, since I've always been told that talking about your problems helps them. I cheated on my husband with his best friend, and I currently do not know how to go about appeasing him. I am in such a bad place. I know what I did was wrong, but for the sake of our marriage, I need him to forgive me. If my husband doesn't not forgive me, then I am literally ruined. I know you're probably wondering what happened, so backstory first. I am Arya, a 28 female, and my husband Jimin, a 29 male, have been married for 2 years, and we live in California in the United States of America. We met at a summer music festival. We both liked the same indie band playing on the main stage, so we ended up dancing together in the crowd. We connected, and I even remember joking that he shared a name with the popular singer Jimin from BTS, which made him laugh. It was as if something clicked between us. We shared dreams and made promises, and Jimin became my rock. He was such a sweet and caring guy and didn't care that I was so out of his league. For context, so you understand where I'm coming from, my husband Jimin is a chaebol. For those that don't know what a chaebol is a very large South Korean family-owned conglomerate, so basically large families-owned companies. The kids of those families are called chaebols, and they are called this because they are very rich. And I don't mean regular rich, I mean the 1% rich, the top untouchable rich. These few families are like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates of South Korea. And that's the kind of family my husband came from. I, on the other hand, grew up on the bad side of town in the US and lived on food stamps. So yes, me and my husband came from 2 different worlds. I was so surprised when he proposed to me within a year of dating and then introduced me to his family. Of course, his family did not like me. To them, I was from the wrong race, wrong nationality, and poor. What could their son want from me? Chaebols have a strict rule of marrying from other influential families, so they couldn't believe my husband wanted me. Trust me, it was something that stunned me, lol. I had always thought stuff like this only existed in. So I was really surprised to find out the power hierarchy. Stuff was real. My husband had to give me a quick rerun of everything to know about chaebols and Korea and stuff to do and not do. So it was really disheartening when they didn't like me. They said I was a gold digger and tried to convince my husband, but of course my husband didn't listen. And in a few months we were married. To quell my husband's family's fear, I suggested signing a prenup. And even though my husband disagreed, he finally caved in when I insisted and made me sign a prenup. The marriage went smoothly. It was a very small wedding at a small church, and we invited just a few friends and family members. I didn't want something large because I hated being around crowds, and he respected that. I remember telling him the words, "I do." To be honest, I was scared of getting married because I didn't want it to hold me down. But eventually I summoned up the courage because I loved my husband. Like I said before, my husband was from a very rich family. In fact, he was the next in line heir to be CEO until he stepped down for his younger brother. I remember it caused a huge falling out in his family. Because my husband was my father-in-law's choice to be CEO. My father-in-law could not understand why my husband would turn down being CEO, but my husband said he didn't really want the stress that came with that. Plus the fact that we would have to move back to South Korea and have to travel a lot, he just didn't want that stress. So my husband became a bit of a part-time teacher. He only went to work on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, so Wednesdays and Thursdays were his days off during the weekdays. While it was hilarious, I know you're probably shocked. I found it hilarious too. My husband was a second-generation heir to one of the biggest countries in South Korea. So how does one go from that to becoming a common part-time teacher? But the thing is, my husband has always been humble, and it didn't really bother him. He didn't care what his status was and didn't want to be bored at home, so he took the job. That didn't stop his family from mocking him, lol. They mocked him for weeks as they found it hilarious and insulting to their family name. Because of my husband's family's wealth, I also didn't need to work, but I didn't want to be a stay-at-home wife, as I thought that would be too boring. So I decided to pursue my passion, which was hairstyling. I was very good at it and decided to operate my own store, which Jimin bought for me. Within a few weeks of opening my store, I decided I needed to get serious. And I mean serious. I was seriously making money there because I was really good at hairstyling, and I didn't have much competition. So I decided to give my store an upgrade. Of course, Jimin had no qualms giving me money for that. I had a full-on remake of my store and got a receptionist and some other hairstylists, so it wouldn't just be me in the store, and we'd attend to customers quicker. And within months, I knew I made the right decision. Business was booming, so I hired even more stylists. I was now more management and less hands-on at the job because I had a lot of stylists working for me. One day, someone came into the store to look for me. He didn't have an appointment and didn't sound like someone I knew at all, but I wasn't busy, so I told the receptionist to let him in. The moment he came in, I was surprised. He was really handsome, and I mean it. My husband Jimin is very handsome, tall, pale skin, and long hair, but there was something about this guy that just really drew me in like a forbidden fruit. He introduced himself and told me his name was Minjun, but that I could call him by his English name, Michael. He was Korean, just like my husband. It was something I thought was interesting at that moment, but didn't give much thought to it until I later found out he was my husband's best friend. He said he was looking for a job as a hairstylist. I was honestly taken aback at first because nothing about this guy screamed stylist, but I had always learned to never judge a book by its cover, so I decided to give him a chance. I let him try his hands on a dummy, and I was astounded. He was good, like really good, amazing even. I wasn't really looking for a stylist then because I had enough stylists at the store, but Michael's skills were just too good to pass on, so I employed him. He fit in like a perfect glove. Everybody loved Michiel. He was funny, handsome, charming. In fact, he was perfect. The customers loved him because he was exceptionally skilled and really handsome. In fact, a lot of them would refuse to be worked on by any stylist except Michiel lol. Some would even wait till he was free, if they came and he was busy. The other co-workers, stylists, on the other hand, loved him because he was so handsome, nice, and patient with them, even the ones that weren't officially stylists but were going through training or something. Few months in, though, and I realized there was something about Michael. He was just different. Michael had a lot of passion for the job, but it was obvious he had never worked a day in his life before, at least to me. As someone who grew up in the slums and lived on food stamps, it was pretty easy to pick out a person that had never known suffering in his life, and Michiel was that person. He did not carry himself like someone that needed to work. He carried himself like someone that wanted to work. And I know you might be wondering, oh, what do you mean by that? You don't know what you're saying. But just hear me out. There's a certain way that a person carries themselves that you just know that they're different. I'm guessing I noticed it because Michael carried himself the same way my husband carries himself, like he was on a whole different level from everybody. No, they weren't proud. My husband was definitely the most humble and kindest person I knew, and Michiel too was definitely not proud, but they were just different. They stood out from the crowd in a good way. It was something I also mentioned to my husband after our first date, about how the way he carried himself was different. My husband was amused LOL, but told me that chaebols were usually taught to be well-rounded in all areas from birth, and maybe it was that. Besides, those weren't the only things. I I noticed about Michael. I also noticed the kind of clothes he wore. They were very expensive, lol, and also the cars he drove. Everyone in the store thought Michael didn't have a car. But what they didn't know was that he actually had a driver that always dropped him a few blocks away from the store in the morning and waited right at that spot to pick him up when he closed. I had only noticed it by chance when I came very early to work a few times. Michael was always very early to work. In fact, he was usually the first to arrive, and usually also the last to leave. I had noticed that it was the same person every time, so it couldn't be an Uber. And also, the cars the driver drove were very expensive. Initially, I had thought that maybe the driver was Michael's boyfriend or husband, but I had to dismiss that train of thoughts because Michael himself one time during discussions in the store admitted that he was straight and single, and also, I noticed the interactions between the driver and Mikhail were too sparsy and dry for them to be together. I know this sounds like I'm invested in Mikhail lol, but I was actually intrigued. He was like a puzzle, difficult to unravel. In fact, he was an enigma, if you would call him that. During all these puzzling, Michael and I started to grow closer. We had a lot in common. We both loved hairstyling, and we were very good at it. We loved movies and art, and we had a ton of other stuff that we had in common. I am naturally a very introverted and shy person, but Michael just made speaking easy and effortless. With him, I felt like I could truly be myself. Maybe that should have been the first red flag in my head, but back then, I just didn't care. I had always grown up thinking people didn't like me and even had some abandonment issues. So when someone very attractive, apart from my husband, started showing me attention, I gobbled it up. One day, I remember it being a Wednesday. I had forgotten my laptop at home, and since it was my husband's day off, he brought it to the store for me. The receptionist and everyone knows him there, so he doesn't get stopped at the receptionist's desk or anything. So imagine my surprise when I, in my office, heard my husband happily say someone's name like Minjun Wo. At first, I wondered who Minjun was and if he was a customer before remembering that Mikhail was Minjun, and he had told me that when he came to apply for a job. I got up from my desk and went to look because I was curious. There was my husband hugging Mikhail, so they knew each other, and from the way they were hugging, they seemed pretty close. We went into my office so as not to cause a ruckus for customers getting their hair done, and my husband then introduced Michael as his best friend and a chibol, and that was when it clicked. Now I knew why I was so curious about him, why I was so intrigued. He was a chibol. His family was very rich. That was when I realized why I thought he was so similar to my husband. At first I was stunned, then amused. Why was someone from a family that owned one of the biggest companies in South Korea working as a stylist in my store? Lol. Of course I questioned Michael about it, to which he told me he had been bored and had always liked styling hairs, hence why he applied. He was also trying to show his family that hairstyling wasn't a fool's errand, hence why he was working. His family held the belief that hairstyling wasn't something he should bother himself with, since he would inherit the company someday, but he had always loved hairstyling. I also found out from my husband that Michael was currently in America because he was refusing to go back home to Korea. I also questioned another thing. Why wasn't Michael at our wedding? My husband said Michael was his best friend, but he had never told me about him, nor did I see him at the wedding. My husband, however, explained that that was because he and Michael had been going through a rough patch then and weren't in touch. Remember the rules I told you guys about chibols marrying other chibols and influential families? Well, apparently everyone had assumed lol, even though they weren't dating, that my husband would marry Michael's sister to merge the two families together because they were so similar in status, and that it would be good for business. So they were appalled when my husband had brought me along and said he was going to marry me. Hence, another reason why they didn't approve of our marriage. Also, Michael's sister had a crush on my husband, so she was really crushed that my husband had married someone else. And that's why Michael had gotten angry at my husband, and they had a falling out until a few months ago when Michael finally reached out and apologized. I was really stunned and also questioned about why my husband didn't tell me about it. But my husband said during that time, he didn't think it was necessary, and the thing really put him in a bad mood. Then so he didn't want to talk about it. I kind of understood him as I can really relate to not wanting to talk about something that brings bad memories, and I let it go. But it really brought us closer. Michael told me all about the embarrassing things my husband did in childhood, Lowell, and all the things I didn't know about him. My husband is not a secretive person by any means and is very open with me, but Michael has known him since childhood, so there was a lot of stuff that he knew, Lowell. It brought us closer, and soon we were hanging out solo. Sometimes we would go watch a movie or go to an art gallery to see an exhibition, stuff like that. I started getting excited to go to work in the morning because I knew Michael was usually the first one there, and we would talk and relate before the others would come. And I also didn't leave as early as I used to from work because I knew Michael was usually the last to leave, and we would also chat and have fun. Sometimes we would go out for breakfast in the morning before anyone came, or we would go out for dinner in the evening. I guess that was when I started falling for him. I should have known he was a liar, but he just looked too innocent. He was also just too charming for my own good. The second red flag that should have gone off in my head was the fact that his sister was supposed to marry my husband. But I overlooked that, since I thought he was already over it since he reached out to my husband to apologize. Another red flag that I should have also noticed going off in my head was the fact that he insisted on hanging out with me without my husband present. Honestly, I noticed everything, even when he flirted with me and I flirted back. But I was just so flattered that somebody actually wanted me that I didn't even notice the foolish hole I was digging myself into. That was why I didn't resist when he first kissed me. I recoiled at first and thought of my husband, but Michelle convinced me that my husband would never know, and so I fell into his honeyed traps. We started having a secret affair. The mornings before everyone would come in for work that we used to talk and go out for breakfast were now times we would be intimate. Sometimes we would also wait before everyone left, before becoming intimate. We were like two stupid rabbits. Sometimes I would tell my husband I had to walk overtime at work, just so I could stay with Michael. Or sometimes while my husband was at work, I would go over to the house with Michael. I think about a week ago or something, my father-in-law fell sick. It was bad, or so they said. My husband knew that he had to fly back to South Korea because he knew that there would be a crazy power tussle in the family and company if my father-in-law, who was the current CEO, died. They didn't give us specifics about what was wrong with my father-in-law except from telling us it was bad and that he was in the hospital. My husband wanted to fly back with me, but I refused because frankly his family didn't like me. So why bother? And also, how would I keep up my affair with Michael if I was in South Korea? So I used my business as an excuse and told him I didn't trust my workers enough to leave them on their own for the time that we would be in South Korea. Of course, my husband was very disappointed, but he decided to leave me and flew back alone. I was ecstatic. Yes, I know I'm disgusting and a vile cheater. How could I be ecstatic that my husband traveled to see my ill father-in-law? But honestly, I feel like that time there was a veil hanging over my eyes. It was as if I wasn't the one doing those actions. Now I regret it, and if I could go back in time, I would not make the same mistakes either way. During that period, Michelle and I started using I and my husband's house as our meeting point. We started meeting up regularly at the house since my husband was away. Of course, I called my husband regularly and asked for updates so as not to seem callous and be a caring wife. My husband said he didn't think my father-in-law's illness was as bad as they made it seem, and that he didn't think he was dying anything soon, but that he would stay for a while just to be sure. I was gladdened by that, of course. In as much as the fact that my father-in-law did not like me, he was still my husband's father, and him dying now would disorganize a lot of things. Either way, Michael and I continued using I and my husband's house as our meeting point, and because I was getting regular updates from my husband, I really did not think he was coming anything soon. Oh, how I was so wrong. Yesterday, Michael and I decided to meet up at the house, as we regularly did since my husband left. We jumped on each other as soon as we got into the house and began getting intimate. We hadn't even really gone far when I heard the door to the bedroom open and in walked my husband with a luggage in his hands. I was stunned. I never heard the front door opening or the gate or anything of that sort, so I was really, really shocked. I was so invested in being intimate with Michelle and didn't even think my husband was coming today that I hadn't even thought to listen for any noises, hence why I never heard anything. Cue me rushing to cover myself with the bedsheets and Michael lazily picking his clothes and putting it on. Yes, I mean, lazily. He wasn't rushing, which would be the normal response in a situation like this. In fact, he had a stupid grin on his face. And I remember wondering why he was smiling, but I was too bothered by my husband's silence to even care. Michael put on his clothes and left. My husband was still standing by the door. He looked so surprised. It was obvious he was not expecting this at all. He was silent for a while, and then he went crazy, and I mean crazy. He started silently screaming. You know the kind of screaming where the person is obviously screaming, but there's no sound coming out from their mouth. He destroyed everything in the house, and I mean everything. All the expensive artworks, expensive items I collected, mirrors, everything went down, and then he just sat down and looked so defeated. I feel so guilty. My husband is the calmest person I know, so realizing I pushed him to this state makes me feel guilty. He has left the house now, and I do not know what to do. I am so scared I feel like my marriage is over, and I destroyed it myself. What do I do? Apart from the mayhem he evoked in the house, he did not say a word or even look at me. I honestly need your advice. Please help. Update. Hello, Reddit. It's been a while. About a month to be exact. I honestly said I wasn't going to post on here again because back then when I made that post, I was honestly looking for advice and just needed someone to talk to. Either way, a lot of people have been coming to my DMs, asking for updates and wanting to know what happened. So here's everything that has gone down since. First of all, my husband, or should I say ex-husband, and I are getting a divorce. No dramatics, no long story. He doesn't want to work on the marriage, doesn't want counseling, just a divorce. He feels like I've ultimately betrayed him and that there's no coming back from this. He has presented me with divorce papers to sign, and I know that I do not have a good case in court. I might not even get a settlement. First of all, we had a prenuptial agreement in place. Second of all, we do not even have any children together as we decided that we weren't ready yet, so I can't file for child support. Third, he has evidence of me cheating. Yes, I was as shocked as you are when I found out. My husband knew, and he found out through the good old-fashioned way, that a lot of people have been caught through texts. He found out through my text messages, but he didn't know who I was cheating on him with, and he really wanted to find out, hence why he waited and didn't confront me. And yes, the red flags that went off in my head were right. Michael was the devil himself. Michael only got with me to destroy my marriage, and I'm not even joking or being dramatic here. He told me this himself, apparently. My husband wanted to surprise me with his presence, so he had texted Michael earlier that day and asked him if I was at the store, to which Michael had said yes, even though Michael knew that we would be at home. He had set it up so my husband would come home and meet us at home, and he had been right. My husband had come home to drop off his luggage before coming to the store to surprise me, and had met the shock of his life. As to why Michael did it, he told me he only did it because he was curious as to why my husband would pick me over his sister. Now that my husband has finally seen my true colors, he will go back to his sister. My husband had really been enraged on finding out that the person I had been cheating on him with had been his best friend, and that was why he went on such a crazy spree around the house. He said he had expected anyone but Michael. Also, because of the prenuptial agreement in place, I won't be getting much money even if I was to get a settlement. Here's why: after my husband stepped down from being heir, his main source of income became his teaching job, because my husband refused to become CEO after my father-in-law. My father-in-law wanted to cut my husband off, but my mother-in-law refused and still funded my husband. My husband also had a hefty trust fund in place, so even if my mother-in-law hadn't funded him, my husband still wouldn't have gone broke. Knowing how smart my husband is, I'm sure he has already transferred every single fund he got from his mother back to her, and also the trust fund is something he had before we got married, so I won't be getting any access to that. Then again, this is all speculation, as I honestly don't know for sure. We'll be meeting in court soon, and then I'll know. In the meantime, I guess I'm going to arm myself with a lawyer because I am no expert on legal matters. Safe to see I've ruined my entire marriage and I am solely to blame. I just wish my husband had chosen to work on our marriage instead of a divorce. I am not a saint. I have my fair share of flaws and I have done my husband wrong. But I mean, we should have sat down as adults and discussed everything and not act irrational like he did. We should have tried counseling. Did I also mention my husband has sold the store he bought for me? Yes, he did, and now I have no source of income. I'm back to square one. And do you know what hurts the most? It's the fact that I'm the only one taking the blame and the fall. Despite the fact that Michael seduced me, he's getting no blame. He has gone back to South Korea, and his life is just peachy. I'll probably go broke after this and have to pick myself up right from square one again, but Michael will get no consequence at all. I still hope that one day, though, that karma comes for him. Also, the fact that I proved my in-laws right also hurts. I know they are probably throwing a feast and telling my husband how they were right. Well, I hope someone learns from my situation and mistakes. Thanks for listening, honestly.